The chair recognizes Darrell Perry, representing Liberty Lobby LLC.
Thank you. For the record, Darrell Perry, CEO of Liberty Lobby LLC. And I support the bill, and I think that this is a very good attempt at coming to a compromise of several pieces of legislation that have been before this committee over the last couple of years. I realize there are a lot of new faces here that did not get to experience the wonderful day-long committee hearings on some of the previous pieces of legislation.
Let's hope we don't repeat that.
Yes. One thing that I do note here that I can't find in HB408 that was in some of the previous legislation was a notification to the Secretary of State. That seemed to be very important to the Secretary of State's office. I know that some of the previous legislation was a requirement that the Secretary of State give approval, and I think if memory serves correct, the compromise was to notify Secretary of State, and that seems to be missing since there already is at least one amendment that you'll be hearing on this bill. Maybe that's something to consider. Additionally, if you look at page 1, line 30, where it talks about accidents, natural disasters, or other emergencies, it says the moderator may at any time prior to the scheduled session postpone, reschedule, etc. I think for sake of consistency, the same wording that is on line 22 might want to be used. But again, that would be up to the discretion of this committee. Now, to answer Representative Lang's previous question about voter confusion, you had asked about what happens if a neighboring town postpones, but the town that you live in doesn't. There might also be confusion because of the March, April, or possibly May county elections, to where somebody think, oh, well, everybody else is voting today, I must be voting today, and then they go to the polling place and it's not open, and what's going on? Where I live in Keene, there are several of the neighboring towns where they've got an SB2 town and they've got the SB2 school district, where for 2 consecutive weeks, those municipalities have deliberative sessions, but the local talk radio station, all they're talking about is the Keene School District deliberative being on this day, so there could be confusion over which day a deliberative session is. There are all kinds of things that could cause voter confusion just because, quite frankly, most voters don't actually pay that close of attention to elections. And again, in Keene, where I live, voter turnout for school board elections is generally around 10%, which is not good at all. A couple of years ago, I forget if it was 2016 or 2017, there was a pretty bad snowstorm where several towns and municipalities were postponing elections. Secretary of State said, can't do that. The roads in Keene weren't being cleared, but we were still told you have to show up and vote. Well, which is it? Is it safe to travel on the roads, or is it not safe to travel on the roads? You're giving me conflicting information here, and voter turnout was much lower than normal, and normal is pretty low. So I think that this is a good start here, and I'll attempt to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Perry? Representative Lang.
What's the provision for the November election for postponement?
Says in here for cities, which Keene is a city, that there is a provision, or at least I thought I saw something in here about cities being able to postpone city elections.
I'm sorry, I think I said November. The November general election, presidential election, statewide.
Oh, when you said November, I'm thinking because Keene is a city, so we elect our mayor, city council in November. For statewide general, there doesn't appear to be a provision, and maybe this body might want to consider doing something. I don't know if other states have provisions for moving general elections due to any kind of unforeseen weather circumstance. If so, might be something to look into, of adopting, something similar, but as I say, I don't know of any. And there might also be some kind of federal limits on moving federal elections. As we know, Congress is elected every 2 years, and Fed say has to be done that first Tuesday after the first Monday.
Representative Posel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dell, Mr. Perry, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can you tell me what your participation is in other elections, general elections? You said 10%.
Yep, for city elections in Keene, it's generally between 10 to 15%. I think we had like 17% last year, and it was considered record turnout for the city election. Would have been 2 years ago, so not last year. And then, of course, during the state elections, it's obviously going to be higher, but voter turnout overall seems to be pretty dismal, where I don't recall it being over 50% since I've lived here.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Perry? Seeing none, thank you very much.